The federal government detailed for the first time today the brutality and treatment that Native American children suffered when, beginning in the 1800s, they were forcibly moved into U.S. boarding schools. Leaders of different tribes and communities spelled out a litany of horrors that they say led to a cultural genocide that still impacts Native Americans to this day. Amna Nawaz looks at what the investigation found.
Judy, between 1819 and 1969, thousands of Native American, Alaskan Native, and Hawaiian Native children attended these U.S. government schools, part of a system of over 400 facilities spread out across 37 states or then territories. More than 500 children died while attending. Kids as young as 4 were forcibly removed from their families, transported across the country in some cases to schools where they were banned from speaking their language, forced to do manual labor, and suffered physical and sexual abuse. Secretary of the Interior Deb Haaland spoke today about her own connection to those schools during a difficult and emotional press conference.
The fact that I am standing here today as the first Indigenous Cabinet Secretary is testament to the strength and determination of Native people. I am here because my ancestors persevered. I stand on the shoulders of my grandmother and my mother, and the work we will do with the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative will have a transformational impact on the generations who follow.
Also at that event was our guest, Deborah Parker. She is CEO of the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition and a member of the Tulalip tribe in Washington. The coalition works with the government on this report. Deborah, welcome to the NewsHour, and thank you for making the time. We could hear it there in Secretary Haaland's voice. I heard it in your voice when you were speaking earlier today, too. It was difficult. And I wonder if you can just tell me what it was like in that moment, what it felt like in the room to finally be able to come forward and share these findings.
You know, in that moment, it was like a release of extreme amount of sorrow and grief, but also this feeling of pride that we're here today. We're in Washington, D.C. We're at our nation's capital. You know, I'm sitting next to an Indigenous woman from the Laguna Pueblo, known as the U.S. Secretary Interior, Deb Haaland, and we're here to share a story, to share a truth that has not been told for generations. The enormous feeling of that, it has impacted so many of us for generations, and it's time that we tell this story. It starts with this Interior report on the U.S. boarding schools and how we've been impacted by this federal government on the lives of Indigenous children and families.
And we should note that this first report is volume 1. There will be more findings from the investigation to come, but specifically this work found marked and unmarked burial sites at 53 different schools, the remains of hundreds of children who died in U.S. government custody. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the details uncovered in this investigation? What kind of treatment did those children go through at those schools? How did they die?
So many of our children were taken and never returned. We know that some of them were murdered. Some of them were buried on residential school, boarding school sites and near rivers, on hillsides. The stories are so enormous, and we know these stories from our relatives. We know these stories so well, but we're waiting for the federal government. We're waiting for churches, for others to tell the story as well. And, you know, when we talk about the pain, these were beatings, tortures. Children, just the other day, a member from the Alaska Native tribe shared with me that his mother was put in the basement of one of the boarding schools. She was chained to a heater and she was beaten daily. And so hearing these stories, knowing that our relatives suffered so enormously is a lot to carry.
You have mentioned, we heard Secretary Haaland mention this idea of intergenerational trauma, that there is a lasting impact and legacy after what children went through, what a generation went through in those schools. And the reports show, right, today the disparities are absolutely there. When you look at the American Indian and Alaskan Native communities, you see some of the highest rates of poverty and premature death and suicide, some of the lowest rates of graduation. So I want to ask you to connect the dots for us. Do you believe that this effort, this investigation, it can help to close some of those gaps? What's your hope?
Absolutely. The hope is that we find healing. The hope is that we come together as a nation to not only tell of these truths, but also to begin to heal together. And you know, our communities have known this truth for generations. It's time that the United States government understands these truths. It's time that we listen. It's time that we hold space for our traditional elders, for our keepers of our language. It's just time that we support tribal nations and indigenous peoples who are continue to suffer. And we suffer because when our children attend these schools, they're not taught this language. They're not taught our history. We're written out of the history books. You know, the goal was kill the Indian, save the man. And so for so many of us growing up in the United States, all we wanted to be was the very best self that we could be. We wanted to carry our traditions. We want to speak our languages, but for our children and our grandparents, that was beaten out of them. That for me to take a class, a Lushootseed class from my tribe, I sat there and cried. It was so difficult, and I couldn't understand why. But my father shared with me that grandmother cried. She tried to sing her song, but grandfather would say, "Don't sing, they'll arrest you. They'll come and get you." So these are moments that were so painful for our family, and they were meant for us to forget our songs. It was meant for us to forget our dances and our ceremonies and our language. So this generational pain exists very deep within so many of our relatives across what these lands are now called, you know, United States. This is our way of life.
Deb, you mentioned today that you're not going to stop advocating until there's a full accounting from the U.S. government. So what does that mean to you?
Well, it means that the records go back to the families, that tribal nations are able to find where their children, the missing and murdered children, that the government apologizes to these nations, but not only apologizes, that they make amends. And you know, I don't have the recipe for that amends. It will be up to each tribal nation, each indigenous person who has suffered at the hands of this colonial system. We're just getting to the point where we're telling our story, and I think the rest of that will come as we listen to our elders, as we listen to the stories.
That is Deborah Parker, CEO of the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.